What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special. It's time to celebrate the end of 2021, the year best known for being only the second lousiest year of this decade so far. And we're going to ring in 2022 by looking back at the top 10 financial stories of 2021. You ready? Hit it. Happy New Year to all you Melonheads out there. Thank you for joining me. I'm Jack Gamble. I'm Nobody Special, and it is time to celebrate the end of 2021. And while there's still about 12 hours left in the year, I'm going to go out on a limb and say 2021 wasn't quite as bad as 2020. But there was a lot that happened this year, a lot of big stories in finance. And we are going to ring in the new year by looking back at the top 10 biggest stories of 2021. Now, before we get into those stories, guys, I have to ask, could you please smash that big, beautiful like button, subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell. It really helps me out, and I would be forever in your debt. And now it is time to start our top 10 list. And I will list these in order of increasing importance in my personal opinion. Yours may differ. This is just me talking here. Number 10, the collapse of Archegos Capital Management. How does a $10 billion hedge fund manage to lose $20 billion? Funny you should ask. Enter Bill Hwang, the head of Archegos Capital Management. See, what Bill Hwang did was he made some very highly leveraged bets in a number of stocks such as Baidu and Viacom CBS. But he did it very secretly using an obscure instrument known as a total return swap. And in a nutshell, in a total return swap, you take out a very large loan from the bank, and the bank buys the stock with that loan. But the stock stays on the books of the bank. And in exchange, you pay them a regular monthly fee. Now, if the stocks go up in value, the bank pays you the increased value of the stock. But if the stocks go down in value, you have to pay the bank for the decrease in value of the stocks that the bank is holding on the books for you, on top of your monthly payments. Now, the kicker was Bill Hwang took out this massive position, not just at one bank or two bank or three bank, but at least 6 different banks. And every one of them, he was leveraged up to his eyeballs. So when those stocks started to decline and the margin calls started, first bank that called Hwang on his margin got paid. The second one got paid a little bit. The third, fourth, and fifth, Bill was out of money. And the losses piled up fast, with Credit Suisse losing $5.5 billion on $20 billion worth of exposure. That is almost half of Credit Suisse's total capital at the time. On top of that, you had Nomura lost nearly $3 billion, and a handful of other banks lost hundreds of millions. Now, one would have to wonder, what are the risk guys at these banks doing? Because Bill Hwang, keep in mind, had been banned from trading in Hong Kong after being convicted of insider trading. So how does a guy with a record for insider trading manage to take out a highly leveraged position at not just one, but 6 different major banks? Kind of makes you think, maybe these Wall Street guys aren't really as smart as they want us to think they are. Because they're not. They really aren't. Number 9, Federal Reserve insider trading. If there was one story this year that really made me grind my molars, it was this one. When we found out that the Federal Reserve governors, including Jerome Powell, Robert Kaplan, and Eric Rosengren, had sold all of their stocks and all of their bonds to eliminate the appearance of a conflict of interest. How benevolent of them, right? Now that we were at this all-time high and they were ready to start the taper, which most people consider was about to crash the stock market, and it may end up doing it, now they're going to put their ethics on full display for all of us to see, and they're going to sell their stocks. You see, it turns out all along while the Federal Reserve was flooding the market with liquidity, buying corporate bonds, municipal bonds, mortgage-backed securities, it turns out that Fed governors were investing their personal funds in those same assets that the Federal Reserve was buying. Conflict of interest much? Yeah. This resulted in the resignation of Fed Presidents Robert Kaplan of Dallas and Eric Rosengren of Boston, and Jerome Powell somehow managed to keep his job and even got reappointed by President Biden for another term. And if you're wondering if we're on the brink of a big decline in the stock market, remember, the Federal Reserve governors just sold all their stocks along with most of the CEOs in the country. Yeah, folks, there is a big decline coming in the stock market. Forget what they say and look what they do. They're getting their money out of the market. Number 8. The Great Resignation, and we'll throw in the labor shortage on top of that. There is something going on in labor markets. Nobody really knows what it is, but there's a lot of speculation going on about why. But for some reason in August, 4.3 million people quit their jobs in the United States. In September, 4.4 million quit. In October, 4.2 million quit. It's gotten so bad that at this point there are 11 million job openings in the United States, even though there are only 7.4 million unemployed. Now, there's a lot of reasons for this. 2020 taught us that some of us really just wanted to stay home, that we don't want to go back to the office. We had questions about childcare. As the cost of childcare go up, a lot of people decided it wasn't worth it to enter the workforce if all the money you make is just going to go to your kid's daycare. Might as well have one parent stay home with the kids. And in the face of this rampant inflation, a lot of people are just saying, it is not worth my time to go work for $10 an hour or $15 an hour when the price of everything is going up faster than I can earn it. Whatever the reason, Americans are quitting their jobs at an astronomical pace. It's driving wages higher, and it's creating a huge excess of job openings. And if I had to guess, this is really going to hit economic activity in 2022, because with all of these vacant job positions, there's a lot of economic activity that just is not happening right now. Number 7, the taper. The dreaded taper. The one that we were thinking about, or talking about. Well, it's here. In July, Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chairman, finally announced that the Fed was finally talking about and thinking about tapering, which is code for reducing their monthly asset purchases. You see, for the last year and a half, and it's still ongoing right now, the Federal Reserve has been printing money and using that money to buy mortgage-backed securities and U.S. government bonds. That's had the effect of suppressing interest rates and also flooding the market with liquidity, and it's also been causing a lot of inflation. Well, for most of the year, the markets were dreading the announcement of the taper. Oh my goodness, when they taper, they're going to crash the markets, or oh man, there's going to be a taper tantrum like there was in 2011. Well, the taper is finally here. In July, they announced that they were finally talking about tapering. Then they started the taper in November, and by early December, they announced that they were going to accelerate and double the pace of the taper so that they are done by March. And it looks like rate hikes are going to start not too soon after that. All of this is being driven by this inflation boogeyman that the Fed is trying to fight, or at least trying to convince us they want to fight. And this is after a year of telling us that there is no inflation. There's only a little inflation. It's below our 2% target. And then inflation is here, but we're going to let it run hot. And then inflation is running hot, and now it's transitory. And then inflation wasn't transitory, and now maybe we're going to... Who knows what they're going to say next? If there's one thing 2021 is going to be known for, it is wishy-washy statements from the Federal Reserve, them changing their tune often and causing all kinds of problems in markets. Who knows what they're going to do in 2022? Number 6. The silver squeeze, and this one is near and dear to my heart because this is where this channel came from, the Wall Street Silver Group in Reddit. Now, a lot of people are familiar with the Ape movement and the Wall Street Bets crowd in Reddit, and the Wall Street Silver Group was an offshoot of that. There was a faction within Wall Street Bets that broke off and formed its own group called the Wall Street Silver Group, because the silverbacks know that the price of silver has been suppressed for years, that the big banks are using ETFs and shady shorting tactics and spoofing and every trick under the sun to suppress the price of precious metals, to rip off investors, and to conceal inflation from the public. And all of a sudden in February, you had a huge rush of speculators piled into the silver market, buying up everything from physical bullion to ETFs to contracts on the COMEX. And we found out from Ronan Manley over at Bullion Star that they were just 3 days away from crashing silver markets. That at the rate people were buying up silver, the global silver market would have failed and the price of silver would have gone parabolic in just 3 more days. And the powers that be in the silver market were so afraid of what was going on with the silver squeeze that they called an emergency meeting in the middle of the night. And that meeting consisted of the bullion banks, the CFTC, the SEC, and of course the managers of the SLV, the biggest silver ETF on the market. And in a sneak attack, all at once, you had the SLV change their prospectus to allow them to take our money without buying any silver. We had the CFTC announced investigations into price manipulations. We had the COMEX jacked up margin requirements, which triggered margin calls and stop losses all across the market. At the same time, we had JP Morgan announced a very suspicious downgrade of silver, even though anybody who worked in the silver industry could tell you that they were frantically trying to meet this increase in demand for it. And at the same time, the talking heads in the press started cracking out story after story about how the silver squeeze was ill-fated and a bad idea and it wasn't going to work. Well, all of these things combined did have the effect of suppressing the silver squeeze, although the silverbacks are not done yet, as there's now 175,000 members in the Wall Street Silver Group on Reddit, and they are buying up every bit of physical silver that they can, and they are not playing these silly paper games that have been used to manipulate the prices. And at this moment, we're down to only about 87 million ounces of registered silver left on the COMEX. That ground is getting closer, so something tells me this story is not over yet. Number 5, an energy crisis. One story that caught a lot of people by surprise this year was a sudden shortage of energy, namely fossil fuels. It started back in February in Texas, where an unseasonable deep freeze set in, caused widespread power failures in Texas, caused damage to homes and infrastructure all over. The cost of that Texas deep freeze was somewhere around $90 billion. It was a miserable couple of weeks for a lot of Texans. And now we're starting to see something similar go on almost worldwide, as we had flooding in China that closed a lot of coal mines, caused an energy shortage in China, caused China to buy up all the natural gas and all the coal they could find on the market. Suddenly, power prices are spiking. We've got geopolitical tensions in Eastern Europe causing reduced flow in the pipelines, and that led to record prices for natural gas and electricity in Europe. Next thing you know, there's a fleet of LNG tankers from the United States flying across the ocean to try to save the day. Well, it looks like warmer weather has finally set in Europe, so the panic in the energy markets has somewhat subsided in recent days, but you know what? We are just getting started in winter, and something tells me this story is going to get worse before it gets better. Because after a decade of neglecting our energy infrastructure, and this misguided unicorns and rainbows and wishful thinking can power a modern industrialized society, people are starting to realize, oh, we still need oil and gas. Keep your eye on those food markets, folks. We've been talking about it on the channel. This fertilizer shortage that is sprung out of this energy crisis could cause a food crisis next year. Number 4, the China Evergrand collapse. The biggest story nobody was talking about for much of 2021 was the world's second most indebted developer, China Evergrand, with over $300 billion in debt. Turns out the second largest developer in the world was running effectively a Ponzi scheme where they were using down payments from new investors to finish construction on old apartments. And as long as the down payments kept coming in from new investors, they were able to keep finishing these apartments and delivering new ones. Well, now you've got 65 million vacant homes in China. You've got a Chinese population on the brink of collapse because of decades of the one-child policy. You've got an astronomical mountain of debt, some of it hidden from the public view through these local government finance vehicles and other shady off-balance sheet activities. Sprinkle in some wealth management products, which are basically these loans that the companies extorted from their own employees. And man, you've got one heck of a debt mess on your hand. And one by one, these Chinese developers have started falling. And after months and months of speculation and missed payments, Evergrande was finally downgraded to restricted default by Fitch in December, although the company is still not in bankruptcy court. So again, this story is still developing, and I think this will probably rank very high on the list next year. Number 3, the supply chain and shortages of just about everything. What started early in the year with it seemed like the car companies were just having a little bit of trouble getting their chips off the boats, and in a couple of weeks this should be back to normal. Here we are at the end of the year. You still can't get a new car made. There's satellite images of thousands upon thousands of trucks, unfinished, lined up bumper to bumper, just waiting for that little chip to finish the car off. The price of used vehicles is skyrocketing. And now we've got shortages of the most random things popping up. Taco sauce, windows if you're trying to build a house, parts for just about everything. A lot of people were worried they weren't going to be able to get their Christmas presents on time. We had boats lined up as far as the eye could see at U.S. ports, a shortage of truck drivers, shortage of shipping containers in Asia, a mountain of empty shipping containers here in the States. 2021 was a logistical nightmare, and it's still ongoing. Again, this is one that I think will show up in the list next year. Number 2, inflation. And who could have seen this one coming? Note sarcasm. It turns out when you print trillions and trillions of dollars while at the same time stifling economic activity via lockdowns, the prices of things goes up. Who'd have thunk it? While we've been ringing the alarm bell since day one on this channel about inflation, and the folks in the Wall Street Silver Group have been talking about it since February, it seems like everybody was somehow caught off guard by inflation, or at least they're pretending to be. We started the year by denying inflation even existed, and then we said, oh, inflation is here, but it's low, don't worry. And then we said inflation is just temporary or transitory. Finally, we're admitting it's not transitory, and now we're acting surprised, saying, oh my God, look at all this inflation. Where did this come from? Month after month, these CPI numbers got higher and higher and higher, and now here we sit at 6.8% inflation that they will admit. And most people realize those statistics are rather doo-doo, and that inflation is actually significantly higher than the 6.8 number the government will put out. And as I've been saying on this channel for a while, those rent increases still haven't shown up in inflation. And with everything that's going on in the food market and with this fertilizer shortage and the energy crisis, I'm afraid inflation is going to be with us for the foreseeable future. And worse yet, now that the government is actively fighting inflation, or at least saying they are, we have to wonder what kind of damage are they going to cause elsewhere in the economy by fighting the inflation that they created. 2022 is going to be an interesting year. And the number 1 story of 2021 is, hands down, the ape movement, the Reddit rebellion. Millions and millions of people who are fed up with these crooks on Wall Street, who are insider trading, who are spoofing, who are naked shorting, piling in, destroying otherwise healthy companies. Well, a couple of people on Reddit caught wind of what was going on and realized that these schmucks in Wall Street had gotten so ridiculously greedy that they had shorted GameStop to as high as 140% of the float. And they got together and realized, hey guys, if we can just buy a few million shares of this company, we can squeeze these guys and put them out of business. And if we refuse to sell, if we hold our shares with our diamond hands, then we can send these things to the moon, the mother of all short squeezes. And as this movement was gaining momentum, people in the press started by mocking the apes and saying, oh, a bunch of these idiots on social media, they can't be trusted with their own money. They're going to lose everything. The next thing you know, we're having these emergency meetings in the middle of the night where hedge funds are going under, brokerages are at risk of going under, market makers and clearinghouses are at risk of going under. You can bet the powers that be in Wall Street were terrified of the ape movement and still are terrified of the ape movement. If you think I'm kidding, remember number 10, archegos? How this one greedy fund with only $10 billion under management managed to lose $20 billion? Well, what do you think happens if the apes had actually pulled off the MOAS? What do you think happens if GME and AMC and Clove and who knows whatever stock actually does go to the moon? How many of those archegos funds might be out there, and how over-leveraged are they? And how damaged could the banks be, and could the clearinghouses be? How many of these obscure derivative products like the total return swaps could be out there with GameStop and AMC? I say it a lot on this channel. The biggest con that has been pulled over on us is that we need Wall Street, that we need the financial services industry, that they are smart and we are stupid, and we need to hand them our money for them to manage and deal with. It's for our own good. And what do? They usually lose our money while making themselves rich at the process. And if there's one thing that the apes proved this year, it's that we don't need them and they're not that smart. And the other thing is that they are afraid of us, that the elites in this world only have as much power as we let them have. And when we get together, they can't stop us. Apes together strong. And again, this is a movement that is only getting started. Maybe it has fallen out of the headlines, but it is still out there. These squeezes are still on. They still have not been covered. Apes not leaving. And Ken Griffin, you can't hide forever. So there you have it, guys. Our top 10 stories of 2021 in order of importance, according to Nobody Special. Let me know what you think. Are there any I missed? Let me know down in the comments. Do you think one was more important than the other? Let me know in the comments. And one thing is for sure, with 2022 on the horizon, we've got this inflation bug going on. We've got the Fed starting to tighten. We've got a mountain of debt. We've got these squeezes that are still in play. We've still got our supply chain issues. Who knows how many of these crooked hedge funds are out there over leveraged. 2022 is going to be an interesting year, folks, and something tells me that 2021 is going to end up holding its beer. Guys, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell. It really helps me out. It helps me to keep this channel growing. I hope you guys have a very happy new year. And in the meantime, live small and dream big.